Hey everybody, I'm Dan Bespris, the host of Fantasy NBA Today, Hoopball's flagship full-season fantasy podcast. We cover every piece of news, every mock draft, every rank list, pickups, drops, buy lows, sell highs, and every sleeper candidate all year long, Monday through Friday. Come check us out. We're Fantasy NBA Today, and you can follow me on Twitter for updates at Dan Bespris, DANBESBRIS. We'll talk to you soon.
The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello, and welcome to the Hoop Ball DFS Today podcast. I am your host, and I'm flying solo today to break down this wonderful Sunday, August 30th card. We have some new playoff series starting. We have a couple other ones that might be finishing. Might get game sevens on them, but looks like due to the injury report, we might see one of them round out. But nonetheless, we have a lot of good stuff to get into. Really looking forward to this slate, this card. I think just getting a fresh series is like a fresh slate for me. When you get towards the back end of the series, you end up playing guys that you weren't really on just because you're waiting for that one good game in the series, and another game you're chasing what you saw. So really looking forward to just kind of jumping into this. Before we get into anything, just a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Manscaped. Go check them out, guys. Use that promo code HoopBall20 over there, HOOPBALL20, and you will get 20% off and free shipping on your entire purchase. We always talk about the good stuff over there, guys, so please go check out them. It is a luxury item for you or your significant other. But we're going to jump right into this. We got 3 games on the card. We have most of the lines and totals and over-unders released. We might see some fluctuation. That's why I say most, depending on some of this news. But we're going to start it off 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Boston Celtics going against the Toronto Raptors. This game is coming in at a 216 over-under, with Toronto being favored by 2.5 points. As far as injuries are concerned, for the Raptors, we have Kyle Lowry being listed as probable, coming off that ankle sprain. Seemed like he was going to actually miss at least a game or two during this series, but he's back. He should be right back into the starting lineup. We'll have to keep an eye out to exactly how he looks and how he's playing on that ankle, whether or not that might affect his minutes, maybe slightly, but I still expect him to play with his usual lock and load amount. And then for the Celtics, it's really just Javonte Green, Gordon Hayward, and then Tremont Waters all out. So should be business as usual. These two teams have met up plenty of times. We've seen their matchups. We kind of, I think, should know the weak points for each individual team. But Jason Tatum will start the Celtics, coming in at 9,200. I'm never going to say not to play Tatum. I just don't love him in this sort of matchup. They protect the rim very well, that being the Raptors. Him on Pascal Siakam, there's going to be a slight edge for both of these guys because Tatum's probably just going to be a little too quick for Siakam, and Siakam's just a little bit too long for Tatum. But at 9,200, I kind of want to just go down a little bit more to those other two guys that we're used to playing, being Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown. They're both around that 7,200. With Gordon Hayward off the floor, these two guys have just picked up the usage. Kemba is now playing his normal allotment of minutes. He's taking high volume shot attempts. All the things that we wanted to see from Kemba Walker for most of the season, that it just frankly wasn't there. And that's because when you have 4 guys like Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, and Gordon Hayward, it's slim pickings on usage. And Tatum is clearly the best player on the team, so he's going to get the majority to begin with. So I like the little groove he's been in. I'm not expecting him to come out here and drop another 47 or 50. It is a tough matchup defensively for Kemba, but at 7,200, I think he feels like a rock solid 35 to 38 point guy. So I'll take a couple shots on him. And the same thing with Jaylen Brown. Mostly I'll probably look to get him into that small forward position just because he has that eligibility. It helps us out. But he's got the same sort of upside Kemba does, same sort of floor. They both have just been playing great. We've been seeing a couple down games from Jaylen Brown over the past, but like 41 and 42 minutes in that series going against Philly in the last few games, he's going to continue to play a boatload of minutes. This guy's a great point per minute type of player. So those would be my main 2 options I'm really looking at. I don't have a lot of interest in the front court between Tice and Cantor. You don't, like I just said, Toronto has plenty of guys they could throw at him, whether they want to start unleashing Gasol a little bit or they just want to keep having Ibaka just handle most of the role. But both those guys are very capable. And then Siakam also in the front court slides over to center. He generally plays like a minute or two, not too much, but definitely have to take it into account. But yeah, that's it. Only thing for me over there in Boston is going to be the main two pieces. If you want to dabble in the Marcus Smart, I'm going to wait for him to kind of maybe get down another 200 or 300 bucks. Slide over to the Toronto Raptors now. And, we just talked about Siakam. He's the highest priced option right now coming in for the Raptors. And 8,100 is a fair price tag for Siakam, but he just hasn't been aggressive enough for me throughout the past series. We saw them try to get him the ball a little bit more towards that Brooklyn team. He took 22 and 23 shot attempts. And I think we talked about on the show, it just seemed like they were forcing it to him on purpose because he hasn't been in a groove. He was one of those guys that hasn't played. Now, we're a month in, but this defensive matchup's a little bit different. Not going to tell you not to play him, but I'm definitely probably going to be underweight and under the field on him for the most part. But Kyle Lowry, 7,900, only $200 behind. I don't mind looking at Kyle Lowry anytime there's a guy that has a questionable tag next to his name. People get a little bit scared off. They know about the ankle injury. He's probably going to have his minutes limited. It's not an easy matchup for him whatsoever. So he's probably just going to remain like a tournament play for me. I wouldn't trust it in cash games, just given the other things I just said. We have other options that we could choose from, but he definitely makes a little bit more sense in tournaments. I'll probably have a couple of shares, but I'll mostly be looking at Freddie VanVleet. He's just been balling out. Knowing that there's a slight possibility that Kyle Lowry might be, eased in just slightly. Maybe he gets a hair under his normal minutes, whatever it might be. Fred VanVleet's balling out at 7,700. I have no problem looking at Fred VanVleet. Also shooting guard eligible, which is wonderful on these short three-card slates. It really allows you to differentiate. We talked about the front court. Marcus Gasol, 3,900. He's a guy I'm just waiting to get a few extra minutes. And we talked about it in that last one. Against Brooklyn, it just wasn't the matchup for him. They only played one big, and the Celtics do play a few bigs, but I just don't. This just doesn't feel like the matchup again yet. He has to be like forced into there. Like if this was, if he was in the Western Conference, it'd be 10 times easier. If he had to go through like we see the guys, Utah and Denver, one of those guys, we'd see Gasol playing probably close to 28 to 30 minutes, and those are the matchups I want. But it's tough right now. There's really nobody outside of the Sixers that he might have had to play big minutes against in this Eastern Conference. So we might not get to see the Gasol unleash unless they make the NBA Finals. So I'll probably hold off on Gasol. Serge Ibaka is getting a little price bump now. He's getting a little expensive. He's over that 6K mark. He put up 2 back-to-back great games. And the Celtics front court is their weak point. It's where I like to look. But, don't go chasing those points necessarily against Brooklyn because we know Brooklyn is the front court that we like to attack. So there's a difference between a good front court to attack and the front court to attack. So he's still very much in play for me. Just not somebody that I feel like is a lock and load, like how I was feeling against Brooklyn. Once we kind of saw that Gasol wasn't playing those minutes, it was lock and load. Whoever's playing center against Brooklyn is something that you need to think about. Norman Powell and OG Anunoby, both these guys around that 4.7, 5.1 price tag, and they pretty much split in divvy minutes. OG 47. If I land on him, maybe just doesn't have enough upside right now for me, especially in this matchup. I could see him getting good minutes, if they do decide to put him on Tatum, but he's not a great point per minute guy. So he'd really just need to stumble into some rebounds, stumble into some steals and blocks. And same thing with Norm Powell. He's got the upside. That's the thing. When Norm's hitting his shots, he will get you to where he needs to get you. It's all going to be about him in the shot falling. The 2 games in the last series where he did shoot above 60%, he gave us a return of at least 37 DK points. The other 2 games, he still shot well. He was 50%, but the shot volume was a lot lower. It would have to make it work for me. I'd have to land on him. He's not a guy that I'm really gravitating towards at this moment. I feel like we have enough small forward options. But he's definitely probably, my third or fourth favorite play on the Raptors. If I'm going down in order, it's going to be VanVleet, Ibaka. Then I would probably put Powell, Siakam, Lowry. And Lowry is just, like I said, just strictly a GPP. I kind of want to see how he looks on this ankle before I start investing in him. Moving on to the next game, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. We have the Los Angeles Clippers going against the Dallas Mavericks. As far as a game total, this is the high game total of the day, 238.5. Clippers being favored by 10.5 points. And it's also got a massively loaded up injury report. So as far as the Mavs, we have a lot of names to keep an eye out for. So Trey Burke, Luka Doncic, Dorian Finney-Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr. are all questionable. And then Courtney Lee, Kristaps, and as we know, Powell, been out for a while, are all ruled out. And for the Clippers, it's just Patrick Beverley who is being considered questionable. So we'll start with this Clippers team. The Mavs will probably take an extra minute just due to the injuries and things that we need to kind of keep an eye out for. But Kawhi Leonard balling out at 10-1. I mean, this game has the highest game total. We are going to want some pieces in here. So I don't mind looking at Kawhi Leonard at 10-1. That's a perfectly fine price tag. I prefer to play him over, a guy like Jokich. It's really going to be hindering, I think, these big names on whether or not Doncic plays. Because if Doncic sits, which I highly doubt he does, this is a do-or-die game for him. I'm under the expectations that he's going to play. Is he going to be playing under 100%? Probably not, but does that really matter what we saw him do in that first game when he came back when he hurt his ankle? So I don't mind looking at Kawhi Leonard, but I want Doncic to play. Paul George, 8,300. He came out with his comments saying that he was basically just dealing with some pretty bad anxiety. Whether it's in the bubble or the playoffs, the situation. He wasn't getting his mind right, and kudos to him. There's a lot of people that might think otherwise, but I don't think this was like a cop-out excuse or anything like that. I think this is a real thing for him. He probably does have anxiety, and it's a brave thing to talk about. So I do give him credit for doing that. He did come back with a pretty decent game, played only 25 minutes in that last blowout, shot 12 of 18, 35 actual points. Not much in the peripheral stats, but nonetheless, he put up about 42.75 DK points. I think I'm still going to stay away. I really like the price tag. I think it's a great price tag, but I'm not going to sit here and say, you heard me on the podcast before. The anxiety explains it, but I don't think that's what it all is. I think his shoulder is hurt. I mean, the way he ices it after each game, he was struggling with his shot. So it could be both. I could be wrong, but a lot about Paul George doesn't look right. And I don't think I'm going to chase the game after, the one outlier game in this series so far because he's been struggling. So I'm in the camp where, if I'm not playing Paul George, I start to look at some of those second unit guys a little bit more, your Lou Williams and your Montrezl Harrells, and that's kind of the way I'm leaning a little bit tonight. So I do like Lou Will. I'm going to go right into that. If I'm not playing a ton of Paul George, I'm probably going to play some decent amount of Lou Will. When they need him, he's always there. And 6,400, it's not a very appealing price tag. That's to say the least. So I think he's a good tournament play. So not somebody I'd probably play in cash, but solid tournament play that, I think some ownership will probably drift away from him. But if this game stays close, if Luka Doncic plays, he's going to get his. And then Montrezl Harrell, I was all over him in that last one, and we got a good game from him. He didn't necessarily see the big minutes I want to, but they're trending upwards. He played 23 minutes, and if he's going to play more than 20 at 4,400, he has a very good chance to return value. And I think that, they're going to want to use as many games to kind of get him acclimated, get him back involved, get his cardio up, get his conditioning up. So, even I think at the very least, him and Zubac split the minutes, 24-24, and 24 is enough for me to have some interest in Harrell. I don't mind Zubac, but I prefer Harrell over him. And if Patrick Beverley happens to sit out again, Reggie Jackson, he's been playing like a solid value play. He's only 3,800. Back-to-back games with at least 23 DK points or more. One of those was 26. So I wouldn't mind looking at him. Probably, it'd have to make it fit. He's not a core value piece that I would necessarily just build around. But even if this game gets out of hand, you can be rest assured that Reggie Jackson, Harrell, both those guys will play enough minutes to still be able to return the value. Whereas in your Lou Williams, your Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, if it looks anything like that last game and they only play 25 minutes, they'll probably do well enough if they're blowing them out to return your value. But they're not going to get you that 6x return on a guy like Leonard that's 10K. You'll get your 50. But when you're playing up, in these kinds of matchups, you want that 60 possibility. So that's kind of where I'm at with these Clippers. Slide over to Dallas. Obviously no news right now on Doncic. He's the big guy that we're waiting to hear. I mean, there are some other guys that are going to be impacted as well. Tim Hardaway Jr., Trey Burke, and Dorian Finney-Smith, all these guys being questionable. That's going to open up a ton of minutes. And, if one of these guys sits, like if Hardaway sits, we can look at guys like Curry and Burke and maybe even a DeLon Wright. Those guys we can be rest assured are going to get a boost. They're solid values. They're solid plays. It's a high total game. The Clippers play up in pace. So there's a lot of reasons why we should like guys like that. Now, if Doncic sits, that's when you want to start just thinking almost like a little bit of blowout mode. You can look at your guy like Boban. just getting a few extra minutes as a fan favorite at the end of a game if they're down 30 or 40 points or something like that. You can look at DeLon Wright a little bit more. You can look at J.J. Barea at minimum salary if we see a guy like Doncic is out. Those are the guys that we see, get an extra allotment but are dirt cheap, and that we would be able to get some solid value out of them. Now, Maxi Kleber is the other guy that we need to talk about. I'm not playing Tim Hardaway Jr. either way, just to be honest. Not a guy that I generally play or gravitate towards. Takes a really good matchup for me. 6K, I think he can get you that 5x return that you might be looking for in cash, but not much more than that. But Kleber, he's been playing solid with Porzingis out. He only played 28 minutes in that blowout, but he gave a solid return while he was in there. We got more than a 5x from him. He was only 42. We got 25.5. So this is a matchup where he's going to have to play decent minutes. Probably doesn't need to come out there and play 36 or 38. But if he's out there playing 32 minutes, I don't mind taking a few shots at him at 5,200. Feels maybe a little bit safer in cash. But we've seen some upside out of him before in the past. He gets a few block shots. We've seen 34, 35 point DK games out of him. So main options, Doncic obviously in play if he does play. Just we know what he can do even on an injured ankle. Maxi Kleber. And then I'll be looking at those guards between the Trey Burke, Seth Currys. If we do hear that either, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Doncic or one of those guys out. And like I said, if Doncic is out, keep your eye on J.J. Barea. But I fully expect him to play with the magnitude of this game, with them on the brink of elimination. Let's go on to the last and final game. It's the late game, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Denver Nuggets going against the Utah Jazz. And this is another elimination game. Utah has Denver's backs against the wall. They've just been torching their defense. Denver doesn't seem like they can defend much, but we'll get to the injury news because they're getting a little bit of a help back. But the game total's 219.5. Utah's being favored by 2.5 points at the moment. As far as Denver, Will Barton's out, and Gary Harris is being considered questionable, but it just came out this morning that he looks like he's going to be available to play. So available doesn't mean he's going to come back and be thrusted into 35, 40 minutes or anything like that. Available means he's probably going to get in there slow. But Gary Harris is one of their best perimeter defenders, so having him back is definitely a boost. Not going to expect much from him otherwise, though, as far as offensively. Ed Davis is out for the Jazz, and that's all we really need to be concerned with. So we'll start with this Denver team. They're kind of switching up their lineup a little bit, and they're going a little bit more defensively. We've been seeing Grant get a heavy workload as far as a minutes total, while some of the other guys, Millsap took a backseat in that last one. Porter Jr. took a backseat in the one before. So they've been mixing and matching depending on where they are in the game script. If they're chasing points, they put Michael Porter Jr. in. If they have any sort of a lead or close game, they generally want to keep it close and defensively. So we'll start at the top for Denver. Nikola Jokic, 9,500. He's been playing excellent, but at 9,500, I'll probably take a pass. I don't want to spend that on him. There's a few other centers that I already talked about whether I want to go down for some value, which is probably the way it's looking, or even just go onto the other side of the ball for this one. $500 more gets me Kawhi Leonard, and I think I'd prefer to do that. Jamal Murray, in the story of this series, Jamal Murray versus Donovan Mitchell. These two guys are just playing out of their mind and taking all the usage with them. We look at Murray's last two games, 26 shot attempts, 31 shot attempts, over 40 minutes in both those games, put up 68 DK points and then 82 the game prior. I'm not chasing that. 8,600 is an expensive price tag for him. Could he do it again? Absolutely. I mean, if he's going to keep shooting way hot and take 26 to 30 shot attempts, I don't see why he can't. But something just tells me that they're not going to let that fly for too much longer. I just can't chase that kind of usage right now, and I'm just not willing to pay that price tag for him. Michael Porter Jr., though, on the other hand, price tag is down. He was a guy that was up over 6K, over the 7K mark at points. He's back down to 5,500. So I do have some interest in Porter Jr. Played 34 minutes in that last game, only 23 and 15 in the two games prior. So we're taking a risk on the minutes. And so, for that reason, maybe not play him as a cash game play, maybe just a tournament type guy. But we know that we've seen the upside. And yes, I don't think he's going to come out here and get, 20 shot attempts like he was getting when some of these other guys were out. But even with him getting 13 shot attempts, he's got a sweet stroke. He's incredibly efficient. He can't defend worth a lick, but we don't care about that. He'll trip into a steal and a block here and there. So I don't mind taking a look at Porter Jr. at that price tag. And then, the forwards, Millsap and Grant, I have slight interest in both. If I had to play one, I'd probably feel more safe with just a guy like Grant, just knowing that he's going to be playing big minutes. Ever since his team really found out that their defensive identity was no identity, they realized they looked up and down their bench and we got one guy that can play that defense stuff. So Grant should continue to play, and I do have some interest in him now. Monte Morris has been drawing a few starts, but don't chase that. The usage won't be there for him as long as Jamal Murray is going to just keep chucking like this. Gary Harris being back, I don't know if they'll immediately insert him into the starting lineup. But again, not a guy that I have interest unless it comes out with a report that there's no minutes limit or he's guaranteed. If he was playing 26 to plus, I could see playing him at 4,200. But if we don't get any news, I'll probably just steer clear. So for me, it's going to be mostly the guys in the front court. It's going to be Porter Jr., Millsap, and Grant are the guys that I'll probably get some shares of from this Denver team. And we'll slide it right over to Utah. And I just talked about Jamal Murray and how well he's playing, how hard he's balling out, and then you got Donovan Mitchell over here, 9,700. Not paying that for Donovan Mitchell. Give me Kawhi Leonard for $400 more. I would even prefer Jamal Murray for I think it's $1,100 less. So I'm not going to sniff Mitchell. Rudy Gobert is very much in play. He'd be the center that I look to spend up on this slate if I spend up on anybody. He's had one good game in this whole series though, so that's why I'm kind of gravitating towards just spending down on Harrell, getting some of these guys in that Boston-Toronto game, getting some of the some exposure in this game, paying up on maybe like a guy like Kawhi Leonard, and just kind of doing my build that way. Just because while he may be the best expensive center on the slate at 7,800, he's really only returned good value once during this series. That's not saying he can't. I very much think he's in play, especially for your tournaments. But it would probably be I'll probably be underweight. And if I'm building 20 lineups, 6 will probably have Gobert. 5 or 6 I could see. Conley, probably one of my favorite plays on this team. I don't like that his price tag getting up there again. I was liking when he was, in that low sixes and, high 5 range, 59 and 6,100. But he's playing great. He looks like his normal self. And I expect him, if this game stays close, you're looking at probably 35, 36 minutes from him, double-digit shot attempts, and just overall solid. I mean, any of his really, really down games, I guess you could say, and down games being not returning his DFS value or his price tag, are the games that Mitchell goes bananas. And those happen. What are you going to do? When a guy's hot and he's shooting 30-plus times, there's not going to be much left for anybody else to sprinkle up. So, don't be surprised if we start to see that kind of level off and, taper off a little bit. Joe Ingles, very much in play, just not a guy that I gravitate towards much. He feels like he's a little safer for cash. He does have some tournament upside at 5,400. But he feels like the opposite to like Michael Porter Jr. So if you're playing cash, he feels like the guy you want at that price range. And if you're playing a tournament, Michael Porter Jr. might be the guy you're looking at. Jordan Clarkson at 5,300. I'll continue to play Jordan Clarkson if he's going to continue to shoot double-digit shot attempts. 5,300 is a fair price tag for him. He's a solid cash game, and he has that tournament upside. You can play him at either or. I definitely do have some slight interest. You wouldn't play him in the same lineups and playing a guy like Conley, though. I would probably switch those guys up. And Royce O'Neal's starting to get to the point where, the value it's getting a little sucked out. He's 4,600. He's, put up that over 25 DK points in 2 out of the last 4 games. One of those games was a pretty big one. It was back on the 19th. But that was also at a $3,700 price tag. Now we're looking at a floor right now, especially if you're talking about a cash floor. You want about 23 points, 22 points minimum. If you're looking at that tournament floor, we're looking for like 25 to 27 at this point. So could he still get that? Yes. He's getting the minutes. So not an immediate go-to value. I might want to just, hold off as long as I could and just try to see what appears in Dallas with on that injury report, who's in, who's out, and maybe make my decision after that. But he's not necessarily like a plug-and-play value like he was when he was, 3,700, let's say. So, and that's probably it for the Jazz. I'm not going to go dumpster diving. At the end of the day, they want to try to just put this series away. They're going to play their guys, I think, pretty short rotation. I would expect like an eight-man rotation, maybe 9, but not much more than that. They're going to keep this one fairly easy for themselves if they could. And that is all we have. And by we, I mean me. But before you leave and before you just turn this off, do me a favor, go check out MyBookie. Use that promo code HOOPBALL, HOOPBALL. Get that free deposit match. Go on there, whether it's baseball, basketball. We got football right around the corner. They got a lot of good stuff to check out. I'll probably be jumping in on some of this NBA action. And if you're following any of the NBA action, you're trying to bet on any games, make sure you're giving a good follow to our guys over at Hoopball Gaming, who are absolutely crushing it out there. I can't say enough about these guys. I'm not a guy that generally gravitates towards it. Betting games, that is, but with the new combination of these of our gentlemen, our podcasts and articles that they're writing over at Hoopball Gaming, combined with just the easy use of MyBookie, customer service there is fantastic as well. I will say that it's been a joyous time for me. So please, guys, go check them out and then give us a nice thumbs up, a rate, a review, whether it's iTunes, wherever you're listening to this. Makes us feel good. We get to see that, know that we're doing something right. Maybe we need to correct something. We get to get a little feedback from you guys, and it allows us to keep the lights on over here. So really do appreciate that. And you can find me on Twitter at Mikeapotria, MikeApotria. Thank you guys for listening. As always, we will be back tomorrow. I'll be running on with Brenton Eckersley, my good buddy from Australia. We'll be breaking down that nice Monday card for you guys. So tune in, check out, and let's go out there and crush some GPPs. I'm feeling it on this Sunday. So good luck, guys.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.